You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Matt Migaki, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians. We talk all about their lives and music while sharing killer craft beers. If you've ever wanted to sneak backstage and share a beer with one of your favorite musicians, well, Vox and Hops is the podcast for you. This week on the podcast, I dropped a killer episode with Kelly Schaefer of Atheist. There is this episode and over 440 other ones to help you enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. So what are you waiting for? It's time to become a Vox and Hops head. Cheers!
Hey, what is going on, everyone? We're here with a fresh show for you today, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed making it. But before we get into that, I want to tell you about a couple things. One of the things I want to tell you about is Sinusoid. Sinusoid instrument cables. They've been supporting this show for years. They're just a fantastic bunch of dudes making some fantastic products, not the least of which is their Sasquatch speaker cable. It's a big, formidable, heavy-duty beast that is appropriately sized to handle the current from your amplifier to your speaker. It's nice and big. It really feels like you got something substantial in your hand when you're handling this thing, and it's also just cool. It's like, man, look at that beast. You look at it, and some things are just cool. The Sasquatch speaker cable definitely fits into that category of being cool. Plus, it's got a 100-year warranty, so you can't argue with that. Go to sinusoid.com, pick one up for your amplified needs today. And know that in doing so, you're helping keep this pirate ship afloat. So yes, make sure you go to sinusoid.com. Check them out. This show is also brought to you by the wonderful people over at Gun Street Wiring Shop. You've got an old Les Paul knocking around. It's got some scratchy pots. It's got some intermittent connections. It's got some weird nastiness going on in the electronics department. Gun Street Wiring Shop can clean all that up for you. Gun Street Wiring Shop makes custom wiring harnesses for whatever kind of guitar you have. They just made one for a Dinky the other day. First time in 4 years that they've been in business, they made a Dinky harness. So they can do whatever you need. So just go to Gun Street Wiring Shop, check them out. If you don't see exactly what you need on the website, don't hesitate to hit up Sean for any crazy phase inverting, whatever kind of crazy harness desires you have. He can make it happen. That's what they're all about, is supporting the community and giving the people what they want. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out and put a smile on that face of yours. Sound like the Joker there. That was kind of creepy. You know what I mean. This episode is also brought to you by the fine folks over at Creation Music Company. Creation Music Company, I talked about their amps last week. I still stand by it. Their amps are phenomenal, and you should definitely go check one out. But they also are mostly known for their pedal boards. We all love pedals. You know me, I'm obsessed with pedals, and it's one of the great joys in life, are guitar pedals. And they make the board that you need to put them on. John's came on a couple times throughout the years. If you want to know more about how they got their start, go back and listen to the first couple Creation Music Company episodes. They're really good. But also, they make great products. They really do. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. They make great products, have great customer support, and their pedal boards are truly innovative in that space. So make sure you go check them out today at creationmusiccompany.com and upgrade your pedal board situation. Yeah. And last thing before we get into today's episode of the podcast, don't forget that you can always support the show by going to tonemob.com/reverb to do any of your reverb.com purchasing. So if you go there, go to tonemob.com/reverb, type that in, boop, nice and easy. It will take you to the reverb.com that you know and love. It shouldn't look any different. Everything should be all the same. You do your buy-in, your selling, whatever you're going to do on Reverb through that link, and it helps push a little bit back to this show and keep things going. Doesn't cost you anything extra, and you're going to be on there buying and selling gear anyway, so you might as well use tonemob.com/reverb for all of that and help put some wind in the sails of this pirate ship. That's what we desperately need around here. So we've just about, actually, I think I need to double check, but as of last month, I believe we covered our server costs for the year. So thank you so much to everyone who has used that link and helped keep this thing going. Now, at least it doesn't cost money, so that's good, right? And anything extra will just help me provide more content for you guys and get more guests on and do more tone mobbery just all around. So if you use tonemob.com/reverb for all that, that would help out immensely. And thank you to everyone who does that. And a lot of you seem to do that on a regular basis. So thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. With that said, we'll get into today's show with Alex from Zander Circuitry. I think you guys are going to like this a lot. So we'll jump right into it. Let's go. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast. I'm your hope. I hope you're not. I hope you're not hoping that I'm your hope. That would be bad. I'm your host, Blake Weiland, and with me today I have Alex Millar from Zander Circuitry. What's happening, man?
Hello, how you doing?
I'm pretty good. Just doing what I love and loving what I do. How about yourself?
Yeah, no, everything's good. Yeah, it's just kind of pushing along.
doing the best that we can, right?
Yeah,
every day.
Exactly.
So how are things in your neck of the woods? Is the weather good? Everything great?
Yeah, we've just had our our 4-day weekend over here in England. It's been really nice. So we get the Friday and the Monday off, which has been pretty good. It fell quite late this year, and we managed to have rarely 4 days of really good sunshine and hot weather. So it was quite nice.
That's not bad at all. What part of the UK are you in?
So I am in Essex, which is just kind of south of London.
Cool. You like it? You like that part of the country?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really get to travel around too much. We've been able to do a little bit more since we do a lot of guitar shows and stuff over here, which has been quite nice. So I get to see little parts of the country up north and stuff that I don't normally go to. But yeah, I've lived in this part of the country my entire life, so I don't really know any different. But we managed to a lot of the time we managed to catch some of the better weather that Britain doesn't normally get. So it's fairly lucky.
That is a good thing to hear. It's you normally just hear, well, it's foggy and misty.
Yeah. Most and 90% of the time it is, but we seem to get that little bit more than everyone else, so it's always good.
Nice, very, very nice. Well, I'd like to jump right into it here because I am familiar with your company. I've seen you guys around, but I don't know anything about the backstory or how it came to be or what the situation is over there. So maybe start from when you were a wee lad, and and you can enlighten us on how you came to be in the position you're in currently.
Yeah, sure. So I think I mean I've been playing guitar since I was probably 10, maybe. I am left-handed. My dad bought me my first guitar. It was just a cheap black Strat copy. I think probably like everyone starts with like an Aria or a Stag or something like that. And that's kind of how I got into playing guitar, and I kind of dipped in and out of it until I was maybe 18 or 19. I'm 25 now. So I've kind of picked it up kind of seriously for, the last 6 or 7 years. And I think being restricted in, the kind of guitars I could buy and the things I could play, kind of obviously from being left-handed, you walk into any music shop and there's if there's 300 guitars, 298 of them are right-handed, and then there's maybe a black Strat and a butterscotch Telly in left-handed, and that's kind of, they're the only choices that I used to get. So my it kind of kicked a bit of a DIY thing into me. So I used to start I really loved offsets, like Jazz Masters and Jaguars, but they just weren't really available, and they weren't really in my price range, because the only ones at the time that were available were like Japanese Fenders and the Kurt Cobain model, and both those being in college at the time, couldn't afford anything near that kind of money, so it kind of led me to start building parts guitars, just out of I'd either buy body blanks and just buy necks off of eBay and stuff like that, and learn how to solder some pots, some pickups, and that kind of then eventually led into me becoming interested in building effects. So I'd buy DIY kits, or I'd just look up like tag board layouts and stuff like that and start building basic boosts and fuzzes. I used to just sell them on Facebook, just through Facebook groups, and it was actually my fiance now, or girlfriend at the time, but fiance now, that kind of said, you should start putting a name to what you're doing and start kind of branding it out, because I'm by trade, I'm a graphic designer. I work full time as a graphic designer still. So it was quite nice for me to have it was a nice little project for me to work on some, branding for myself and build a little brand around what I was doing. And then it just kind of snowballed. I set up a website, set up a Reverb page, started selling a few more bits on eBay and stuff like that. And it just kind of snowballed into what it is today. And I've just kind of, taken it slowly and day by day and week by week. And it's just kind of gradually built up, and it seems to hopefully continuing to be.
So what are some of the early like circuits that you started off? You don't generally just hop from assembling parts guitars to having a line of pedals. What was the evolution of that?
So I think the first DIY kit I bought was a clone of a Electro-Harmonix LPB1, just the like the single knob boost, and it's got about, I don't know, probably 10 parts, including the I think it's got like 2 resistors and a couple of caps and a transistor. Took me hours and hours to solder it, and it was an absolute pig when I'd finished. It looked horrific. It didn't always work, but after jiggling around, kind of hacking it together, actually plugging something in and having it change the sound of my guitar, even if it was just in volume, and knowing that it had been something that I had done, was kind of really gratifying and amazing to me. So that's kind of where I guess it kind of sparked a more of a, well, if I can do this, then maybe I can, I'll work at getting better at doing things like this. And then eventually I just kind of learnt by doing. So that would kind of lead on to me mucking around with circuits like the Fuzz Factory, which again is a fairly simple circuit. And that's kind of what inspired one of our first pedals that I was even kind of making before Zander started, which is the Cyclone Fuzz. That kind of stemmed from me just mucking about with a Fuzz Factory circuit and just basically completely building one, and then piece by piece taking the parts off of the circuit and replacing them and seeing how they worked, or attaching pots where resistors were and seeing what would happen if I varied the resistance of one of the resistors, and it would basically just make it oscillate, or you get a weird sub-octave, or things that start to get glitchy and noisy. And it was just that's kind of how I learned to do parts of circuit design, was just basically by making a load of mistakes and just running wires to different parts of the circuit and seeing what happens.
That seems to be like a little bit more of the circuit bending route than necessarily the numbers and engineering route, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess partly because of what I do for a day job is fairly creative. I think even though I'm pretty good with numbers and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't really keep my interest. I'm more into just being quite hands-on and doing things and just basically just seeing what happens, and if it works, it works, because I think some of the best sounds that I've got from some circuits are from when they're technically being broken, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's sort of like a thing that I used to talk about a little bit more in the early days of the podcast. Is I remember reading something somewhere where like an engineering student brought in a Death by Audio product. I can't remember what it was, if it was the Fuzz War or if it was something like that, one of their big gnarly beasts that they make. And he brought it in, either brought the circuit in or something, and his professor was like, well, that's stupid, they got the transistors in backwards.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, but it sounds good though. That's the thing. That's what we're shooting for.
Yeah, exactly. And I think sometimes, I mean, knowing all the theory and stuff is great, but I think sometimes for some people that can almost be a hindrance to creativity, because sometimes you get, even going back to the story about the guy from the Kinks, like cutting slits in his speakers to get a fuzz sound, that kind of thing. It's like it's not technically correct what he was doing, but it gave him the sound that everyone knows. You really got me. Like everyone knows that tone from that guitar, and that's from just a busted up old amp with a load of holes cut in the speaker.
Yeah, it achieved the destruction, achieved the desired result, which is so often the case with musicians, it seems.
Yeah, no, exactly, and that's kind of been a thing for us. And then obviously once we kind of now doing a load of kind of classic fuzz circuits and putting a load of knobs on things like we normally do, it just kind of led us to more interesting effects like building delays and reverbs. And then eventually where we're aiming to go now is kind of more into the digital kind of route, just because there's so many possibilities and almost endless possibilities for when you're coding effects on a PC. The possibilities for sounds are basically endless, and that's kind of where we're finding really exciting new sounds that we can create and kind of take us out of the area that a lot of other kind of smaller pedal companies are in. We want to kind of branch out from that a little bit and try and take a little bit of space from some of the big boys, which is where we're eventually aiming to go.
Very cool. Very cool. What are you, without revealing too much, what are you kind of looking at for the DSP side of things?
Well, this I can talk about this one because I've announced it. So we're currently working on a pedal called the Junipero, which is a multi-modulation pedal, 8 effects in one kind of large pedal, ranging from detune, chorus, flanger, tremolo, all that sort of stuff. And it's not necessarily just about the effects, but it's also the kind of functionality in the pedal as well. So being able to do things like MIDI and tap tempo, stereo, stored presets on the pedal, that kind of stuff that not a lot of other smaller companies are doing, which is kind of where like I mentioned, trying to kind of branch out into what some of the larger companies are doing, because I think that's eventually where the market is now kind of demanding those sorts of things. You see so many pedal boards. You're probably on a lot of the groups on Facebook like I am, where almost every other board is got some kind of fancy switcher like the ES8 or the Gig Rig or something like that, where people are demanding presets out of pedals, which is where we're now trying to kind of fill that demand as it gets greater.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I know people want, and they say they want. I don't know personally, and I'm not, my scope of musicians that I play with is a little bit limited, but I don't actually know anybody who uses a lot of presets. They kind of everyone still is reaching down and tweaking their knobs, which I guess we're not playing shows, so maybe that would be less the case if we were. But it seems like there's certain things, and I run into this all the time, where we're debating on feature sets to include or not include, and it's like sometimes we end up including them just because we think people will say they want them, not necessarily because we think they're particularly useful. And I'm not saying presets are like that, but I'm saying, do you find that sometimes people just want a feature to say they have a pedal with that feature?
I definitely think there's an aspect of that, which is why we wanted to, rather than just, make a pedal that had, so it's effectively just, it's 8 pedals in one, and you can have MIDI and you can have your 128 presets. What we kind of wanted to do is find that middle ground. So with the Junipero, what we're doing is including 5 presets on board that are you can easily just switch through, with the tap of a foot switch. So it kind of, if there's people there that find MIDI daunting or too complicated, then they can just basically just press and store and then flick through 5 presets. So, you can just effectively just flick through, 5 stored modulation sounds. So it was kind of, like you said, not trying to overwhelm people with the options available, and also not make things unnecessarily complicated for people that don't really want or need it to be that complicated. Because I'm aware, and I know, I probably like you do, I know a lot of guitarists that the second that anything involves screens or hidden menus, or tap this and hold this foot switch down while you turn this knob, that it all becomes way too confusing, and not particularly practical for a live show. If something, if they need to tweak a preset on the fly, what you want them to be able to do is do that as if they were just messing with a regular pedal. So that's something we've been conscious of while we've been developing and getting that ready, is making it easy for people that aren't necessarily that technically gifted, to put it diplomatically.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I can kind of see myself in that category to some degree. I'm like, I've never personally, I've got a lot of pedals and I play with a lot of effects, and I've never really messed with MIDI. Every time I think that I want to, I end up going, no, I'm okay. Like this just seems like a deep, dark rabbit hole. Is it actually a lot easier to understand than what maybe the layperson like me is thinking that it is?
Yeah, I mean, from a development standpoint, I've got a guy helping me kind of set all that kind of stuff up. So with the Junipero, I'm doing all the audio side of things, and then I've got a guy helping me do the kind of control side of stuff for that. It's once you kind of get your head around it, it really isn't as daunting as it would seem, especially with a lot of the switches. It really comes down to, when you're using MIDI, it really comes down to how good the switcher is and how intuitive that is to use. If you can store presets and stuff from the switcher whilst it's plugged into the pedal, that's how easy it is to do with the switcher. It's more dependent on that than the pedal itself, because the pedal is basically just sending out the MIDI out. It's how the switcher interprets that and how it lets you store those presets that's the main factor in how easy it is for the user to put together.
Interesting. So the pedal just kind of has to accept some basic input and output signals to know what to do, and it's really down to how the switcher was designed. That's kind of what I was gathering too. But
yeah.
Then again, I'm always a little bit intimidated. I really thought I was going to buy an ES8. I was like, this is the answer to all of my problems. And then my friend Leon from Pelican Noiseworks got one, and he brought it to a band practice thing, and I was like, never mind. That looks like scary and stuff. So I guess I'll stick with what I know, like a good old codger.
Yeah, I mean, truth be told, before I started working on this project, I knew next to nothing about MIDI as well. It was more just when we were working on, when I pitched to the guy who's helping me out with the control side, about implementing tap and stored presets. He basically said, "Oh, well, it'd be dead easy to just stick a MIDI jack on the back and let people run it into their switches for more presets if you want." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, let's just do it if it's easy enough to implement. The hard work's already been done for storing the presets on the pedal itself. If you want to just, if all it's going to do is mean that I have to we have to put an extra jack on the board for people to plug their switches into, then let's just do it."
So what is the difference between the pedals that have just the 1/4-inch MIDI input and then the ones that have the full MIDI plug? What's going on there?
So the MIDI, I don't know the full story of this, but from what I gather is that it doesn't, with the traditional MIDI pin, which I think is 5 pins, it's not actually using all of those pins. All you need is a TRS jack, like you would for an expression pedal. You only need those connections. So a lot of the times when there's just a 1/4-inch jack on the back, which is what we're going to be doing, what it has to do is it has to basically have the 1/4-inch jack on one end and the MIDI jack on the other end, so you can plug that into the switcher. And sometimes there needs to be a box in between, because different manufacturers have the tip and the ring and the sleeve set up differently. So I think Chase Bliss is different to Source Audio, and then they're different to Strymon. So it all gets slightly complicated again, because there's not really any standard for how those MIDI connections are kind of configured.
Gotcha. Interesting. So, okay, I got you. So so everyone's got theirs wired up to accept the signal a little bit differently, and therefore, am I understanding it correctly? It goes to the 5-pin plug, and then it might be in a different spot on that 5-pin plug, so you kind of have to convert it with a Faves box or whatever.
Yeah, so I've got a little sorry, I've got a little Empress MIDI box, I think it's called. It's like just a tiny little thing, and that basically when you crack the back off, there's a circuit board inside where you can basically bridge some of the different pads depending on what brand of pedal you're plugging it into. So again, it's another complication why I understand why people might shy away from it, because it might not necessarily be the case that you just buy a pedal, shove a jack in the back, and the MIDI's going to work perfectly. It might be the case that you need to do a little bit of groundwork to even get it working in the first place, let alone then worrying about coding saving presets.
Interesting. That's very interesting. I feel like all the big boys need to get together and be like, "Hey, all right, this is how we're gonna do this. Let's stop this from being a problem."
I know it seems like absolute madness, especially because we did it with. Boss did it with power supplies. Everyone's using 9-volt center negative power supplies now, and that, as far as I'm aware, stemmed from Boss. It's known as the Boss style power jack, isn't it? So. Lord knows why we can't all just agree on having one system, but here we are, I guess.
Well, that's kind of it's interesting. I was talking with Jack from Mr. Black about this on one of the features that I really like on his pedals that we kind of went round and round about. Like, I talked to him pretty regularly, and him and his crew figured out for expression control, the easiest and best way to implement it, in my opinion, was how they did it. It's like trying to figure out what knobs are expression controlled. All you do for them is the ones you want expression controlled, you just turn them all the way up.
Yeah.
And that's expression. I'm like, why is that not what everyone does? That's what everyone should do, right?
Yeah. I guess it depends how sophisticated the people they've got are working on, their kind of knowledge of how to do things, because there are awkward ways of, like, in our older pedals, the jack, we basically have to have every so on our tape deck and Exosphere, for example, our reverb and delay, they're kind of rudimentary ways of doing it, in that when you plug the expression jack into the expression in on the back, it basically lifts the connections for the pot. So it basically removes that pot from the circuit and replaces it with the expression pedal itself, which is fine when you've only got, one, or, if you've only got, so basically you then need one jack per control, per parameter, which, is fine if there's only one or two. So with a delay, you might want feedback and time, for example, but then you need 2 expression jacks, one for feedback, one for time. With the way they've done it, it means you can basically, you could have a pedal with 20 knobs, and if you turn them all fully counterclockwise, you could control all of them. And that's, again, something that we're going to have something similar in the Junipero, for being able to control. There's 6 pots, so 3 parameter controls for the effects, mix, tone, and level, and all of those will be expression assignable per preset as well. So again, it's something we're considering and working on, and have factored into some of the new stuff that we're working through.
That'll be cool. I'm very excited to see this. I'd kind of missed the announcement, so it's nice to get all filled in on the new stuff, basically.
Yeah, it's that's like kind of one of the things, and then eventually, we can, once we've kind of got this one nailed and ready to go, we can start, rolling out reverbs and delays and other bits and pieces like that. So we're incredibly excited for kind of the future of the kind of new pedals that we can bring out. We'll still probably bring out, fuzzes and distortions and stuff like that, because they're kind of bread and butter pedals that everyone buys and everyone needs, and they're fun to work on, and they're fairly simple to work on, and they're fairly easy to, by comparison, they're fairly easy to work up a new idea. It might be a case that, the R&D might be, 5 to 10% compared to what it might be to do something like the Junipero, if that, to be honest. So we'll still work on circuits like that. It's just that they might be a little bit more few and far between going forward.
Yeah, once you start kind of chasing the things in the sky, it's hard to come back down to the ground sometimes.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Just random question, and I'm actually quite enjoying it. Are there birds over where you're at right now? Am I hearing birds, or is that something else?
If you can, I didn't realise they were that loud. So I am in my workshop, which is at the end of my garden. So yeah, you may very well be hearing birds. They may just be flying back from wherever they were because the weather is getting slightly better. So apologies if that's really loud.
It's not that loud on my end. I just kept going, I think I hear birds, and it's actually really enjoyable. So,
yeah, I think you may well be actually. Yeah, I can't. Unfortunately, with my headphones on, I can't hear them. But yeah, I think that very well may be what you are hearing coming from outside. They're probably on the roof.
I'm picturing this like the most relaxing workshop ever in like a little British village in Essex, and there's birds twitting about, and there's just green grass everywhere. And I don't know if that's accurate or not, but that's what I'm picturing.
Unfortunately, it's not that picturesque, but it's not far off. It's fairly close. We live in a fairly kind of standard suburban town. But yeah, no, it's lovely. We had the workshop put in last year. Up until then, I was working from the converted kind of garage at the front of the house. It became very apparent that I'd quickly outgrown that because I was building the pedals and recording demos and doing everything in one space. Whereas now with the workshop, we have it kind of split in two. So I've got a larger area for doing recording and demos and having people come round and try stuff out. And then there's a smaller kind of section where all the mess happens, where I'm cutting resistor legs and drilling enclosures and making all that nasty noise and mess. So that kind of stays behind locked doors, whereas before it was all just kind of in one area. So it's nice to be able to separate those two things.
Yeah, I understand that for sure. Like a lot of people have asked like what my favorite piece of gear that I own is, and it's 100%. It's like the shed that I record. Like I'm like, it's changed the whole game. It's like I used to be, kind of in just this one room in the house, and you can only turn up so loud, and by that I mean not at all.
Yeah.
And now that I'm separate, I'm like, this is great. I can play almost whenever I want.
Yes,
this is fantastic.
Yeah, so we live in a mid-terraced house. We've got people either side of us, and that was a slight concern. It was a constant battle when we was filming demos last year, because it was like, do I turn up loud enough so that I can get the recording to sound half decent, or do I turn it down and risk the sound that the acoustic sound of my guitar is going to catch the microphone in all the demos, which is what happened the first time around, and I had to re-record it at a slightly louder volume, which was an absolute pain. But we've been quite lucky, because I was recording some bits and pieces the other day for the pedal that I'm doing with Raygun Effects, another Essex-based company. And I was recording the demo out here in the shed, and it was quite loud. But luckily, we've had some new neighbours move in, and they said, "Oh, was that you playing the other day?" And I was like, "I'm terribly sorry if it was too loud." And they were like, "No, we loved it. It's great. It's like we've moved in and we've got our own kind of like personal concert." So I thought, "Oh, great! I've kind of hit the jackpot here. We've got neighbours that don't mind noise."
Oh, that's fantastic! Yeah,
yeah, it was lucky.
I had to. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say the previous neighbours we had weren't so forgiving.
Yeah, I'm pretty lucky with my neighbors too. But all that said, I have one house that's very close to my studio, and so I basically soundproofed it as much as I could afford to. Once I started digging into that rabbit hole of sound isolation, I discovered that basically it takes a lot of materials and a lot of money to do it right. And so I just did it as best as my wallet would allow. And I asked them over the years, and they're like, we didn't even know that's what that was a music room. So I guess job well done.
Yeah, I mean,
But
yeah. So when we were putting the workshop together, so basically the the people we bought it from, they built the framework, if you like, and then we did everything on the inside, so all the electrics and all the dry lining and stuff. But yeah, we spent a fair amount of money trying to stuff the walls with insulation, both for the harsh British winters and also for some kind of sound dampening. And it seems to be doing a fairly decent job. The only issue is I do have to keep the doors closed, which was difficult over the weekend because I have no aircon in here yet, and it was I was yes, when I was recording the demo, I finished and I was sweating buckets, and I looked up at the little thermostat I've got in here, and it was like 32.5 degrees Celsius as well, so absolutely roasting.
I was going to say, so it was freezing outside.
Yeah, I don't know what that converts to in Fahrenheit. I don't understand that scale.
I don't either. No one does. No one knows what America's doing over here. We're just floundering about with random old British systems.
Yeah, I know. What's feet and inches? What's that?
Who knows? It's king's toes or whatever. I'm not sure. So I want to take a few steps back before the pedal company and before all that. When you first started playing music,
yep.
What kind of music were you into?
So if I recall, the album that got me into wanting to play the guitar was so it's a kind of a funny story really, because it was 2005, so I would have been 12-ish, and it was when Green Day's American Idiot came out. It was starting my first year of high school, so I was very much an angsty teenager, and I remember hearing American Idiot, when the single came out for the first time, and it just being so like loud and aggressive. Well, comparatively, I mean, I know there's a lot more aggressive music out there, but for me as a 12-year-old, it was that had been, I've grown up on listening to just whatever was in the charts, like pop music and stuff. So hearing that, I think it was probably on Top of the Pops. That was kind of the album that made me think, I want to just get a guitar and just, any amp that I could and just turn the distortion up, like full. I think my first pedal that I bought was some Behringer Ultra metal. It was like bright pink, and I just remember turning all the knobs up all the way and just kind of slamming through power chords when I used to learn just like Green Day riffs or whatever. And then that year, I asked for it for a Christmas present, and my mum bought me the wrong album. She bought me the wrong Green Day album. She bought me she bought me International Super Hits. It's like a compilation album. She bought me that instead, which kind of turned me on to a lot of their like older stuff. So I was listening to like Basket Case and When I Come Around and all those kind of classic Green Day songs that at the time I wasn't overly familiar with. But I just remember listening to that album on repeat, just on my portable CD player, because those were still a thing then. And I just remember going on, family holidays and stuff like that, and I'd just be sitting in the back of the car just wearing that CD out completely. I must have listened to it, 200 or 300 times easy.
Yeah, I had the same album. It's funny to hear because we're not that far different in age, but our Green Day experiences are extremely similar. We just have to switch albums around. Like my Green Day album introduction was like Nimrod.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So it was like same experience basically, except just a different album. Just because I'm
a couple of albums,
like five years old.
Yeah.
But
it was bands like that, and then obviously over here before they started making strange music, the Arctic Monkeys, their first album came out that year as well, which is great because it was very. Not only was it kind of like it just sounded like a load of teenagers in a garage recording, it was also very, very British in like accent and the things they were talking about and the sense of humour. So that kind of appealed to me as well as a teenager. So that was like another album that I must have worn out hundreds of times. Which I have very fond memories of that. I regularly go back to it and listen to it from start to finish.
Has your taste changed as you've gotten older? Or are you still kind of into that same style?
I there's definitely an element of like nostalgia, and I still listen to a lot of that stuff. So I still love Nirvana and Green Day, and early Arctic Monkeys, and the first Foo Fighters record as well. That's an insane record that I absolutely love. But I think as I've gotten older, it sounds cliche, but I kind of listen to a little bit of everything. So I'm really into like classic, like kind of hip hop stuff, like Jurassic 5 and A Tribe Called Quest. If I'm just doing soldering, if I'm just sitting there cranking out 20, 30 pedals, I'll normally put on instrumental music. There's a load of stuff on Spotify that's like lo-fi hip hop kind of jazzy stuff that I quite like listening to because it doesn't really require any concentration. It's quite nice background music. But then I really like, shoegaze and ambient post rock stuff as well. So it really is kind of a mixed bag. I try not to focus too much on, get hung up on genres. I just kind of listen to what I like, whether it's from some obscure local band that has, barely any following, or if it's a top 40 artist, I'll just listen to anything if I like it.
Yeah, I've kind of gotten over the guilty pleasure thing.
Yeah,
where that used to be a thing because I came up the punk rock kid. So is it legit? Is it real? Like is it real punk rock? And then as I got older, I'm like, that's the stupidest thing like ever. I'm like, if I want to listen to Lady Gaga, I'm going to listen to Lady Gaga.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
If I want to listen to something, Converge or something, I'll listen to Converge. Like it doesn't matter.
I'm partial to a little bit of Michael Bolton myself. I don't mind a bit of that every now and then.
I get down on some Michael Bolton. I Wear My Sunglasses at Night by Mr. Hart is one of my favorite songs of all time. So whatever. No shame in my game.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, I'm over it. I have no qualms about trying to pretend to be something I'm not. If I like it, I'll listen to it.
For sure. So what's the music scene like in your area? Is there a lot of bands come through? Or do you have to travel? How's that look for
It's
you?
not too bad. Obviously not being about and 45 minutes to an hour outside of London by train. It's fairly easy to get to, which is where a lot of that scene is. There's a few places around here. There's a great place. I live near a town called Southend. Longest pleasure pier on the world, just as a fun fact. It's not that interesting, but
the more you know.
Exactly. They've got a great little venue called Chinnery's that I used to go down to quite regularly as a teenager. I try and get out as much as I can still, but obviously with work and children, it becomes a bit more of a hassle trying to organise a night off to go and see a band. But there's a few good places around. I was involved in that kind of scene a little bit when I was in my late teens, early 20s. So like 5-6 years ago, I was in a little band with a couple of guys that were a few years younger than me, and it unfortunately just kind of fell apart because when they kind of said, "Oh, we're going to go off to university now," I was past that age and I was already working, so it just kind of split apart then, and that's kind of really when I started getting involved in doing the pedal stuff. So working full time as well as trying to run this, just kind of didn't leave me enough time to be involved with that anymore. But there are some great bands around. As I mentioned, Ray Gun Effects that we're working with. He's the lead singer of a band called High Low that are local to us. They're Southend based, and they're probably easily one of my top 5 bands of all time, and that's up there with, like I said, Nirvana and Green Day and bands like that. So yeah, it's been
really?
They're a really, really good band. and I know the guys from it quite well. It's been really nice to just find a band that you like, that you also know. Like, I'm friends with them all on Facebook. It's really strange, like a band that you really love, knowing them and oh, he's gone down to, he's just doing some, like, he's gone out for dinner with his family because he posted about it on Facebook. It's strange knowing those things about a band that you really like. It's weird.
That is really interesting, and I've kind of ran into some of that myself, and I think that's going to be a little more common in this day and age and moving forward, of people being more connected with artists they really like, whether they're, actual like pals with them the way you are, or just in general. I feel like people are going to have a deeper connection to bands and to artists that they're really into, and it's one of the actual positives about social media, which is nice because there's a lot of negatives to it, so it's nice that there are positives.
Yeah, exactly. I can only hope that kind of connection does become stronger and grow between fans and the bands, because it's really nice. There's a lot of up and coming, bands that are around our area that are really trying to make a go of it, and I know all too well how hard it is to make any kind of living out of doing music. So I think building that personal connection is quite important for them to grow a strong fan base, rather than just just putting on shows. I think it's quite an important thing for them to be doing.
I think it's equally important for guys like you doing. I think it's really important for companies to start taking a look at that and recognizing that people want to know, especially at the level that we are used to seeing, they want to know kind of what the guy is about. Like, they're buying from the person as much as they are buying from a brand or a company. And so that's why I think things like this are interesting, and just the way people kind of portray themselves. I mean, you don't have to like put yourself out there to be on what you're comfortable, but I think it. I know if I really like a person behind a brand, I'm more likely to buy something from them. I think that most people are that way.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's been something that it's been somewhat of a steep learning curve for me, in the sense that I'm massively introverted by nature, and incredibly shy. And that was something that, this is weirdly, as a kind of personal aside, it's running Zander has helped me overcome a lot of those things, because I've been put in situations where it's kind of fight or flight, like with going to the shows that we do and the expos, and doing podcasts and being recorded on video for other people's YouTube channels and stuff like that. It's really helped me kind of realize that, wait, I can string a sentence together. I can speak about the products that I make and the products that I sell, and I'm not always going to come across like I'm a complete idiot, which was my main fear of just making a fool of myself. But so that running Zander has really kind of helped me kind of ease into being a little bit more relaxed around doing things that I would have previously been scared to death of.
Well, one good thing about you coming on this show is that you're almost assuredly not going to be the one who sounds like an idiot. That is a really good thing for deciding to do this particular podcast. So thank you.
That's no problem.
But no, I was gonna say I'm definitely an extrovert, which obviously you can probably tell. But even myself, I have reservations about what I put out there, when I put it out there, and how it's portrayed. And one thing I've learned is that while we think it's this big thing, and where it's really uncomfortable in some ways, at the end of the day, most people are just into it. There's trolls. There's always going to be trolls. You can't do anything about that. But by and large, most people are like, well, he's giving it a go. That's pretty cool. It's cool that he's trying, and some people it resonates with.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the reaction I've seen from a lot of people, is that fear of, even if you do make a mistake or say something, make a joke that might go down in poor taste, which I've definitely done before, on on a recording. People just generally don't care for the most part. People don't. Yeah, like you said, it's nothing. It in your head, it's this massive thing that's going to be. It's going to be the end of me. It's going to ruin me and everything that I've worked for. But it doesn't. People just half the time people don't even notice, and it's one of those things that you're just worried about in your own head.
Yeah, I did, and I sometimes I wonder if I should have left it in, but a few episodes, well, several episodes ago, I had Chris Benson from Benson Amps on again, and I was at his shop, and I made a really uncomfortable O.J. Simpson reference, and I struggled with it for a long time before finally deciding to cut it out, and now I kind of wish
Right.
I would have left it in, just so people know how stupid I really am. But it's he gave me the eye while we were recording, and I made this random joke, and he was like after we were done, he was like, "You gonna leave that in?" I'm like, "I think so," and I kept listening back to it, going, "Nah, I can't leave that in." And now I'm like, I should have left it in, but whatever.
Yeah, I think I made a I can't remember what it was, but it didn't resonate as well. I think maybe coming from an area of very dry British humour, it didn't resonate as well with the people I was speaking to, and it kind of fell a little bit flat. But I've moved on. I've picked up. I've forgiven myself for it.
As you should. And one thing that I have to say too, one of the big criticisms I get about this podcast is that my jokes aren't funny. And the thing is I'm not a comedian, and no, my jokes are not funny. So I apologize to everyone who thought they were tuning into a comedy podcast, but that's just simply not what's going on here. It's just some guy who is so nerdy that he has to talk to other nerds about his nerdy thing that he likes. That's really what we're doing right now.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't know why people would expect you to be anything more.
I think I honestly think the bar's been raised on podcasting quite a bit in the last few years. I've been doing it for a long time at this point, but the quality of podcasts, and I try to hold myself to this standard, but I'm, like I said, just kind of a dude. The quality of podcasts in general has gone way up in the last few years, and so I think I'm just being held to a higher standard than I once was.
Yeah, there are some great guys out there. I mean, I try and listen to as much as I can, like gear related or not. Yeah, and like you said, there's so many great people there's some annoyingly talented people in the world, and it makes me both equally proud and very bitter that I'm not one of those people.
Yes, I know that feeling. Who are some of your favorite gear, podcasts, YouTube, whatever gear media people? Who are some of your favorites?
So I try and watch it's mainly this. It's probably just the obvious ones. Andertons were one of the big one of the big starts for me watching gear. That kind of stemmed even when I was just a guitar player and wasn't making any pedals. That pedal show I love. Dan and Mick are great guys, and they've been kind enough to feature me in a pick and mix. So I think it was last year or the year before. So that was great. Podcast wise, I try and listen to Guitar Nerds and Guitar Knobs as well. Todd over in Ohio. Yeah, I think that's where they are.
Yep.
Yeah. They're great guys. Then they've been kind enough to have me on there. Those guys are great. But then I've also got some. It's kind of self-serving, but I'm good friends with Jackson Brooksby from Dipswitch Demos. He runs. So my kind of history with Jackson goes back kind of quite far in that I designed his logo for him. And that's kind of how we kind of started our relationship, if you like. Is he was like, "Oh, can you offer me any advice on what I'm doing?" It was when he was just starting out, and I said, "Yeah, everything's looking great, but I could feel like you could maybe do with a bit more of a stronger like branding around what you were doing." And so I kind of pitched together a few logo ideas for him and worked on his branding and stuff like that. And then in return, he did a couple of demos for me, and that kind of started our like relationship going forward, and then I'm getting him and a few other guys involved in doing user testing and stuff like that, so they can come and try out pedals before they're released. So that's been quite nice to kind of get in with other guys that are kind of as small as I am or was when we were first starting out, and we're kind of all, although we're in different areas, I'm making pedals and he's reviewing pedals, we're kind of growing together and kind of bouncing ideas off of each other, which has been quite nice to be part of this little kind of community. And the gear community in general is they're pretty great. I mean, there are some toxic communities out there online, but we don't seem to be one of them for the most part.
No, that's the best thing about all this. And I know it gets harped on half of the gear media out there, but it really is wonderful. And I think that's why you see so many people attracted to it, and a certain type of person that is attracted to it, because generally, I mean, we all get along. There's very few and far between examples of that not happening. And so it's nice. It's really refreshing.
Yeah, because even with companies that, so for example, myself and other pedal companies, we are effectively direct competitors of one another, but there's no ill feeling or malicious kind of behavior between anyone. It's all very friendly, and yes, there's competition, but it's very friendly, and it's all kind of done in a nice way. And the kind of the collaborations between companies as well, like there was like Land and Farm did last year. Those guys brought out a great pedal, and obviously that goes up to the big boys like JHS with Boss, and then now with myself and Raygun, which is like, yeah, it's great to see companies kind of that are effectively technically competitors kind of just working together and like trying to boost each other up.
Well, yeah, and it goes really deep. It goes even down to like, oh no, I ran out of jacks. Do you guys have any extra jacks that you can sell me? Like that happens all the time.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've literally got an example of that the other day when I was with Steve from Raygun, and we were looking at buying parts for the pedal, for the joint pedal, and there were some parts that are in one of his circuits that I just didn't have, and he just like grabbed a handful and shoved them in a box and was like, "There you go, just take them." But I don't worry about it. It's just so I didn't have to worry about going out and buying those for the ones that I'm going to build. He just gave me a load.
There you go. Yeah, that happens there again all the time. That's a constant thing in this business for sure. And I should say, you keep mentioning ray gun, and I'm going, I have a ray gun. What do I have? I have the Super Fuzz Boy. That's what it is.
Ah, the Game Boy one. Yes. Yeah. So that's kind of, I should have maybe mentioned this at the start, is that Steve from Raygun was kind of one of the reasons I started making pedals, because he is, like I said, he's in Southend, which is about 7 or 8 miles down the road from where I am. So I found him, basically I found the band High Low that I was talking to you about, and like I said, he's the lead singer, and I really liked the sounds they were getting. Found out that he ran Raygun Effects, so I, at one point or another, I've owned pretty much everything that he's made, and I used to, because I only lived down the road, I wouldn't get them posted. I'd go and pick them up, and we'd sit and chat about music and gear and all that kind of stuff for an hour or so. And we kind of built that little like relationship. And then when I started making pedals, it was always like, oh, I wonder if I could, eventually we might be able to do something together. And that has kind of now come to fruition. And it's bizarre doing something with someone like that has been going a lot longer than you have and is comparatively much larger than you are, kind of give you the time of day to work on something together and be as excited about it as you are.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's amazing. Well, we're getting down to close to the hour mark, and I've got a couple questions that I need to throw at you before we sign off here.
Okay,
one of them being, what is your favorite Boss pedal?
Oh, that is a toughie. I would probably say, I've not owned this, so I'll put that caveat in. It would be the Dimension is it the DC2? I think it's called the pink one with the 4 buttons.
Yep. Yeah, I believe that is the DC.
Yeah, it would be that one. I absolutely love that dimension effect. The idea of a chorus without a rate or almost so it's just like a fixed detune. I love that kind of sound because you get that kind of wide space without there being that kind of seasick wobbliness from like an LFO, like running round and round and round. So that would probably be the dimension.
All right, that was easy. I've noticed that question, I expect it to take a little more processing for people because there's a lot of boss pedals and a lot of really wonderful ones, and most people that I've asked it to are they're pretty right there with it. They don't have to think about it too long. You didn't either.
So as you asked it, I thought, oh Christ, this is going to be hard to answer. But as you finished it, I was like, no, I think I know exactly what it is. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've got a massive soft spot for the DS2. Again, probably maybe the third or fourth pedal that I owned because every teenager does because they want to sound like Kurt Cobain,
of course,
and just cranking it into like a 15-watt solid state Marshall and just annoying the hell out of your parents. So that was that I've still got a soft spot for that, and it is a great pedal. There's no doubt about it, for the money as well. But yeah, I think it would definitely still be the Dimension.
The Dimension, very nice, very nice. All right, so what, if anything, is there? I mean, we've already talked about a lot about what you have cooking and in the pipeline and all that, but is there anything else you'd like to say? Plug anybody you'd like to give a shout out to? This is kind of your chance to throw up a billboard, so to speak.
Oh God, we're in the spotlight. Okay. God, what's going on? Oh, yes. Well, the big one. I might as well announce it. We have got a space at NAMM 2020 Winter NAMM in Anaheim.
Oh, nice.
We are going to be exhibiting as on the Stompbox exhibit. I think they're called Stompbox. Yeah, Stompbox exhibit stand. So it'll be. I don't know who else is there yet, but on that stand there'll be me and a bunch of other smaller companies. Which again, it seems like a surreal thing because NAMM seemed like an absolute pipe dream when we first started out. So even to be there in the smaller way which we are, sharing a stand with however other many small companies, is just absolutely incredible for us. And I really cannot. I know we're still. I'm jumping the gun a bit because we're still like 8 months out, but it's just insane that we've managed to secure a spot at what I'm assuming is what I know to be the biggest music exhibition in the world. So yeah, it's amazing that we're going to be there, and I'm very much looking forward to going.
That's fantastic. I'm looking forward to seeing you. It's
are you going?
Oh yes, yeah. I've been going for 4 years, so this will be my 5th NAMM coming up. 5th winter.
Oh,
NAMM.
very cool.
Yeah,
cool. But I've managed to swing it because I promised the fiance that we would also go to Disneyland while we're there. So we're there for 10 nights, and obviously I think 4 of them are NAMM, or 4 of the days are NAMM, and then we're going to do a couple of days in Disney and all that other usual rubbish you do when you're out in Anaheim. But yeah, it'll be my first time in California as well, so it'll be nice to go out there and meet a load of people that I otherwise wouldn't get a chance to meet because they're on the other side of the Atlantic.
Oh, this is going to be fantastic. Really excited to see you. That'll be fun. I'll know the Stompbox exhibit last year was phenomenal. So hopefully this year is just as good. I'm sure it will be.
Yeah, we're hopefully going to be sharing a space with a lot of other really good companies, and hopefully by then we'll have the pedals that I've been mentioning that we're working on, like the Junipero and stuff. Hopefully that stuff will be. Well, it's not an if, it will be ready. Or also help me. Yeah, it will definitely be ready. So we'll be exhibiting some new stuff, which will again be nice for people to kind of see for the first time because there's not much of a better platform to launch a new product than them. So
that's going to be really fun. So I do have one bit of advice for you or anyone else that is going to go to Anaheim and go to Disney and all that stuff. I've done that many times through my life because it's obviously a lot easier for me to get to than it is for you. I just go south a few hours and I'm there.
Mm-hmm.
And basically what shocks me every time, and I always forget about this, is is, yeah, it's expensive to get into the park and whatever. Everyone knows that. You can look that up online. But what really gets me is the price on the food. Like everything's like 30% more expensive than what I'm used to.
Yeah, we did. We went out to Florida, so we've done that Disney. We did that a couple of years ago. And yeah, so it was already an expensive holiday just getting out there and paying for the tickets. And then to then be, whacked with however much it is for a turkey leg or whatever it is they sell. Was insane. But so that was lesson well learned. I think I will take heed of that for this time.
And also, since you're doing NAMM, I don't know if they're offering it in right now, but if you check, you should be able to get a discount on your Disney stuff through NAMM. So,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, hot tip for anyone that's NAMMing and Disneying. They have offered that in the past, like a 10% discount or 15 or whatever. Anything helps when we're talking about the Disney monster.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I will definitely look into that because yes, anything to save me a few dollars will be much appreciated.
For sure. All right, Alex, we have officially got there, but I have to ask you one more question, and I think you might know what that is. But what kind of pizza do you like?
Oh God, I am going to be one of those controversial people and says that he likes a Hawaiian pizza.
Oh, jeez.
I don't know how that's going to go down.
So terrible. I'm so disappointed in you.
Give me ham and pineapple. Maybe even throw a few mushrooms on there. I'm happy. Always thin, never deep dish. That stuff is disgusting. Always thin and crispy.
All right, I like it. You're a man who knows what he wants, and he's not afraid to say it.
Yeah, I will. So yeah. Enjoy that, everyone.
It's for what it's worth. I would say it's about 50-50 with this audience. So you're gonna alienate somebody one way or another. So
the other half are going to be coming up with pitchforks when I get to Anaheim next year.
It's like you should have stayed back home, Limey. All right, man. Well, thanks so much for coming on. This has been a good time. I really enjoyed the talk.
Yeah, no, it was great. Thank you for having me.
Yes, we'll have to do it again sometime.
Yes, for sure, definitely.
All right, everybody. For Alex, this is Blake, and as always, folks, good luck and good tones. All right, there you have it. There's another episode in the can. And if you need more tone mobbery in your life, you need a little more of these conversations, guess what? There's more waiting for you. We've got, I don't even know how many hours of conversation over on Patreon that is not available to the public. Oh no. And on top of it, some of those people get discounts at some of your favorite gear companies. Sometimes they get random things sent to them in the mail. Sometimes they get extra content. Actually, all the time they get extra content. Every week, there's extra episodes over there for their ears. And so if you go to patreon.com/tonemob, you can see any of the options. If you pick $5 is the level that you start getting all the extra episodes. So it's just $5 a month, and you get several hours of additional content every month right into your player where you're listening to this right now. So if you just go over there and check that out, that would mean the world to me. Share this with anybody you might think is interested in it, your gear groups, your gear friends, wherever you hang out on the internet. Maybe you got coworkers, friend, family, whatever. The more people we can get, the more I can do, and the more you can enjoy and listen and hang out and all that stuff. So thank you so much. I know there's a ton of things you could be listening to right now, and you listened all the way to this point on this show, and that fact is not lost on me. So thank you very much. And if you ever need me for anything, reach out at info@tonemob.com. All that good stuff. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye. One last thing before we totally sign off here. I just want to remind you that if you do any shopping at Stringjoy, that's Stringjoy guitar strings made in Nashville, that will help me out as well. As I've said for years, I'm heavily involved in that company, and I really do think they're making the best products on the market. So if you would like to try custom strings, go to tonemob.com/stringjoy and check them out today. I seriously love what the team down there is doing. I help them out with all kinds of things, and by you supporting them, you are also supporting me as well. And hey, you need some strings, so why not get some custom strings just for your guitar and playing style? Again, the link for that is tonemob.com/stringjoy, and that will take you right to their website, and you can do all your shopping through there, and that will help everyone involved out. So thank you very much. Talk to you next time. We are brought to you by the wonderful folks at Gun Street Wiring Shop. Yes, Gun Street Wiring Shop. I've talked about them before. I used to say based out of Bend, Oregon, but guess what? Sean moved to my neck of the woods. Sean's in Portland. Sean is awesome and has helped me with a bunch of stuff lately. And if you have wiring needs for your guitar, he can help you too. If you want to get weird with it, he can get weird. If you just need to spruce things up a little bit, there's your guy. He takes all the guesswork out of doing your guitar wiring, and he makes it simple, and his customer service is top-notch, and I can't say enough good things about Gun Street as a company. I really respect Sean and what he's all about, and the product is top-notch. I've got 3 different guitars that now have Gun Street harnesses in them, and I could not be happier. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out.